Mr. Watts.
What's happening?
Welcome
Welcome back
to season 2, episode 1.
And how should I address you?
The Mrs.
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 What?
What you mean? You know what the social security card is?
You gotta let the people know though.
I am the new and improved official Mrs. Watts. What's up, y'all? Welcome to the What's Up Next podcast. I'm Justine.
And I'm Demetrius, the guru of balance.
So what am I?
I would consider you a strong voice of logic.
I can accept that. Anyway, on this podcast, we're going to take a deep dive into some interesting topics and everyday situations that we face as a young married couple.
We often ask ourselves one of three questions. What's next? What's going on now? And what the hell was we thinking back then? But don't take my word for it. Keep listening and you'll find out.
So.
Straight like that.
Straight like that.
Hey.
You gonna tell the people how we got here? How we got here today? What we talking about? What we talking about? Because I am excited to be back.
I am too. Obviously, that's new news to all of y'all. So I guess we'll give a little brief context to how we got here and what kind of transpired. Because obviously it's season 2, so welcome back to that. And a lot has changed.
Yeah. Hopefully all of y'all are well, feeling good.
Most definitely.
So let's give you guys an outline. Let's just jump right into it.
Right.
And what this outline looks like. So you want to start off?
Engaged in August of 2019.
Yep. And everything that I'm going to give, right, is going to prefix into what we're going to talk about. So we had a family member have a situation that happened in November of 2019. Mm-hmm. After that, we decided that we were going to virtually get married in December of 2019.
Yeah, we did.
And then January of 2020, that's when we really started talking about what we're going to do in terms of the planning process. So we had booked our venue finally, did our deposit. That was exciting. So that was the, we're doing it, right?
Everything was going good at that point.
And then March 2020, just like everybody else knows, COVID-19 became our best friend. And that's when I think I got notified that I was going to be furloughed at that time. The shutdown had officially happened in Texas.
I would say you got to say the stay-at-home order to make it make sense.
Stay-at-home order, sorry.
Yeah.
So
stay-at-home order was officially
implemented
around the third week of March. So pretty much beginning of April, we was without work.
Yep.
For about 2 months. And as you mentioned, you were furloughed. Yep. I'm self-employed, so I was kind of just restricted from even working, even if I wanted to. And that had its implications. Man. That's for sure.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that. And then June, I think we officially had gone back, like, full-time. So
yeah, that
happened. August came along, and at that point, I think when COVID had hit in March, people were like, oh, it'll pass. August, we were like, okay, it ain't passing. Mm-hmm. Texas wanted to be Texas and reopen some stuff, and then we weren't making much progress. So that's when we started really having the wedding conversation. Is this really what we want? Because ideally, we might have a COVID wedding. Mm-hmm. So that was August. We sat on it for like 2-3 months. October came along, and we officially had sent out our cancellation for those who were invited. Mm-hmm. You got that email. It was hard for us to do, but you got that email. And then we jump into February of this year, so 2021, and we were like, okay, how can we reallocate these funds, right?
Yeah.
To what we really do want. Or do we want to do a wedding and postpone it, or do we want to do the bigger investment here and do a house?
And I think that was the recalibration of the mind that took place throughout that whole year of 2020, and kind of figuring out what it is that we wanted and truly desired for ourselves,
right?
Without the influence and kind of expectations of those around us,
right?
And that's how we ended up here.
Yeah, and now we're sitting in April of 2021, and we are actively looking, I'd like to say, right?
Yes.
Actively looking to see if the house option is what we really want to do. So let's walk through the timeline. Like, let's walk it piece by piece.
Break it down.
So,
let's get it.
We got engaged in August. We got married in December. Why did we choose to get married in December? Let's talk through that piece, because I think that's the most important piece for people to understand.
Right, and I think I agree completely. We have to acknowledge the health scare that had happened within your family.
Yeah, that was big.
That kind of gave us like, all right, we need to get things in order. So, health scare that happened with a parental. I don't know if you want to disclose who or if we have in the past.
I mean, I don't think there's an issue with it, but my dad had a stroke in November of 2019 that really, I think, shocked the whole family, because we're talking about a man who is healthy, right? Or healthy to a certain degree.
Man.
And that was a huge shock for all of us. And it was right after we had gotten engaged. So once December had came around, we were like, okay, we really got to start thinking about financials and how do you plan, and if we're really gonna do life together, right? How do you prepare? And even in the sense of IRAs, life insurance, I think we were in that moment at that time and planning all of that. So we were like, okay, how can you better prepare in the time that we're in right now so that we don't have that scenario happen?
And as I mentioned before, and as many of you know, Justine works in the corporate field, and that comes with its benefits, literally and figuratively. And I'm self-employed, where
that comes with benefits.
Comes with benefits, but no benefits. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't have that. So it was like, yo, if something happens to me, where am I covered? Where are we covered? You know?
And at that time, you were 24.
24, yeah.
24. So
yes, I'm 25. Yeah.
In the U.S., you have to be self-insured by the age of 26.
Yeah.
So you can be under your parents until you're 26, but once you're 26, adios. So we were trying to prep ourselves to be like, okay, well, that time's gonna come, so we might as well go ahead and do this. At that time, for my HR people, I did not know that I could add him at any point in time once we were married and claim it as like a life change. So I didn't know all that piece. So I was like, hey, open enrollment is coming up, so I'm gonna hit this open enrollment.
And that's what it was. You were like, yo, this is something, you know, worth considering. As for me, it was like, yo, my biggest influence or motivation for doing this, like, I just want us to have a foundation.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I want us to have our funds in a position where we can do life together, you know, really start plotting, really start building this quote unquote empire, and really getting things in order, you know? That's literally how I viewed it. And I was like, well, what's the sense in waiting a year and a half from now, or however many months it was, than just doing it now? And that's all it really took for me. I don't know what it took for you to want to do it. So I know I told your dad when I met him, like, I was trying to get married. So I knew years ago, like, it was going to happen. Like, that's just not something that I had to really sway on or whatever. For you, was there any reservation you had from that time of being engaged in August to getting legitimately or legally married in December?
No, not at all. I was like, okay, cool. I'm all gung-ho for it if this makes sense. And we had talked about it for a while. I think we got past the little like, oh my God, we're engaged phase at the end of like September. And then we really started having the conversation. And once I realized finances was going to be the biggest benefit of it, I was like, okay, it's a done deal. Like, let's just do it. But I will also say our marriage, right? And I want people to understand the difference between wedding and marriage, right? Marriage is the license, the certificate, hey, we are now entering married life. Wedding is the ceremony. Actual ceremony, right? And I think that's where people fail to understand the difference and the importance between both. So where I'm going with that is, we knew it didn't matter what the certificate said and when it said it. We just knew, like, at that point in time, the ceremony was still happening.
It was strictly it was a CYA and just get things in order for the years to come.
Correct.
And it's crazy that we did that with not knowing what was to come.
COVID was coming.
Not to know what was to come in 2020. Like, you know what I'm saying? And I do think it's important to distinguish the two because, and when we had got married, we had every intent to just, we're just getting married, but we still gonna acknowledge the date of our wedding,
our ceremony,
ceremony, what was supposed to be.
And the second piece of that though is our marriage was not sexy. Like, and I'm being very honest here, right? So no, I'm
fine. Go ahead.
I can take you there.
I can take you there. All you gotta do is say that one time.
If you want me to take you there, it took place in our 1-bedroom apartment, sitting on our bed, FaceTiming your frat brother, my frat brother. And George was going to marry us regardless.
Yes, so, that was going to be our officiant. What is
officiant,
it?
yes.
Okay, I'll just make sure I have the terms right.
So George was going to marry us regardless, but we were like, we kind of want to do this. George was in New York. We were like, okay, we're going to mail the paperwork to you.
Yeah.
You can marry us virtually on FaceTime.
Via FaceTime.
And then mail that stuff back, right? So it was nothing sexy.
It was nothing glamorous. It was nothing for that. It wasn't for anybody but us.
And I will tell you, if I were to do it again, I might have wore a different outfit, but that's about it. I would do it all over again sitting in my room.
You gonna let me drop that footage?
You can drop that footage right here.
Say less. Yeah.
And it was interesting because when we said I do, we were just like, oh, this is not how we thought we was gonna do this. But hey, whatever, it's temporary, right? Because we, at that time again, we thought the I do's weren't gonna come in April because April 25th, 2021 was gonna be our date.
Right.
But we didn't think December 2019 was gonna be that date and the only date that we got.
So let's get into the planning aspect of it. So say we're now in January of 2020. At this point, everything's still good, right? In terms of the world.
Everything's still good.
Everything's still
COVID
good,
don't
right?
exist yet, right?
We kind of mapped out a plan.
Yeah.
And our intent...
A financial plan.
Yeah, a financial plan. Our intent was to pay for the wedding ourselves. We didn't have any expectations for gifts or for people, for contributions.
Yeah.
Nothing like that. It was like, this is going to be us. And if it happens, that'll be a blessing.
Right.
But we're not going to bank on anybody
people
else.
helping, correct.
And we were completely content with that. And I think that's
100%.
fair.
Yep.
So, at the beginning of January, from that point to what would have been April, let's just go March, that was 15 months. We had decided to allocate $1,000 a piece. For those who don't know what $1,000 is, $1,000 USD a piece. Okay. And that was going to total out to around $30,000
at the end.
At the end of it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And obviously you pay for things throughout the year or process of planning a wedding.
Yes.
But that was the goal that we had.
And we thought that was enough. Straight up honesty. We thought that was enough.
Yeah. And then we booked that venue.
Then we booked the venue in January. And that was like, damn. This is the bulk of it. And we honestly thought that was the bulk of it. So we had budgeted. Shout out to your sister for giving us that budget book because we had put some numbers together and we were like, okay, this will work. This $30,000, it'll work. And if it goes maybe $5,000 beyond that, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll take it to the chin.
Somehow, some way. But let me lay this out, right? Let's give the statistics so then we can understand how we got to where we got. Is that okay?
You got that?
So I looked it up, and in 2019, because we're gonna exile, the pandemic has changed a lot of numbers for this, but 2019, the average cost of a wedding in Texas was $30,000. That is ridiculous, right? So when we booked our venue, we were like, okay, we're saving 30, our venue's 10, food and drinks, because we planned on 150 people.
Yeah. And
came out to almost 15,000.
If you do what we were going to do and make sure everybody didn't have to pay for drinks and it was an open bar.
Yep. Because we wanted it to be the experience.
We wanted to give people the experience. You want to come and have fun. If people's going to travel to Texas, we know we wanted to take care of y'all. Yeah. So there we go. We had 25.
Venue, food, right?
25.
What else did we talk about? So decor was gonna be at least another 5.
That ain't my department, but yes.
And I was trying to go all fake flowers and everything. Like I was going cheap, and I still ended up at 5, right? So we haven't talked about transportation. We haven't talked about invitations. Save the dates. We did cheap. We did them virtually too. Bachelorette, bachelor party, rehearsal dinner, which that's kind of a bulk, insurance, and then let's just say accidentals, having some extra money set aside in case there was a bump in price somewhere, right? That we wanted to cover. So ultimately, we planned it out thinking in January, okay, this is gonna be 30-ish, right? Then we got to, let's go farther in our timeline. After COVID had happened, March, we both were out of work for 2 months. Then we started reevaluating come August, and we were like, okay, ultimately it's gonna be about 40 grand. 40 grand.
And that's when we sat down and had that conversation.
We had to have a tough conversation. And that was all coming from a place of, at that point in time, you did not want to partake in the planning process. You were kind of just like, I could give or take. Like, I don't really care about this portion. I don't care about this portion, but...
Indifferent. I'm an indifferent individual. I can go with or without. You
okay.
like it? I used to say I don't care, and then...
I thought you were saying...
I was like, you didn't like me saying I didn't care.
Right.
And I was like, all right, well, how can I say that? But, it being with a better connotation. And so I'm indifferent. I'm like, yo, I can do this or I can do that.
Let me ask you this, though.
What's up?
Coming from the male's perspective, right? Why didn't you want to partake in the planning process? Or partake as much as I wanted you to?
I think that just naturally, that's not something I grew up like, I want this, I want that, I want this. My goal was just to always have a wife.
You got that?
Yeah, like my goal was just to have a wife. I didn't fantasize over the glitz and glamour of a wedding.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know I, would opt out of having one.
Right.
But I just didn't have it. So I feel like that's the difference between you and I. And so, do you feel like you had expectations growing up as a young girl?
I don't think I had the Cinderella story. The Prince Charming at the end of the aisle, and I want to wear this poofy dress, and I want it to look like this, and I want these ladies to stand next to me. I didn't have that vision.
But you had an ideal wedding.
But I had an idea of kind of what I wanted. So
I'd have had it.
Right. Right. So backstory is my parents got married. It was just them and me. Literally. They went to Hawaii. I was the only guest.
I think that's dope to this day.
Right? So I thought, that's dope. You get to, you're getting married on water or near water. It's more intimate. I've never been someone who wanted to, expose or celebrate things with, a large group. So I was kind of I do want it to be intimate. So 150 people was a stretch for me. I was like, do I really want 150 people? And we had talked about it. We were like, are 150 people that are attending this wedding really invested in our marriage? No. So...
I got someone want to go with that. But
that's transparency, though.
Yeah.
That's just transparency. And part of that comes from a place of, we are 24, 25, getting married, and people our age don't really know how to go to weddings yet. They don't know how do I say this?
Etiquette?
The etiquette, right, of weddings. So usually when you go to a wedding...
but let's keep it 100. I was unprivy to this too. If I know where you're going.
We went to a lot of weddings in 2019, though. We went to 3.
And I apologize for those that I didn't, No, I'm playing.
We went to 3. So we had visions of what a wedding should look like. And these 3 couples did exactly what they wanted, how they wanted to do it, and it was dope. It was an experience worth going to. Right? Actually, let me take that back. Maybe between 2018 and 2019, we went to 3. Yeah. And it was amazing.
Yeah.
But I didn't have that vision of this is what I want, this is the dress I want. It just wasn't there. But I knew I wanted it to be intimate. So when we had booked our venue in Dallas, it was kind of a middle.
It was a happy
medium because a lot of people had swayed us hey, just do it in Sacramento, and I was like, nope.
Yeah, he was definitely.
No, I was not doing that because we're both from Sacramento. We would have had your whole congregation there. Everybody on my side would have thought they were welcomed, and that's not how it was going to go down. So, no, it was 150 in Dallas was tough to get to.
No.
Do you know what our number would have looked like in Sacramento?
Yeah, I know. I've had clients that have had 300 plus type weddings. I'm like, how?
Right.
Bruh? How?
Right.
Ain't no way.
So Dallas was a middle medium because my ideal was I wanted the Maldives. That's just what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, yep, I want to get married on a cabana. Like, I want to do it this way.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe 50 people max. Like, then that all altered when we started really having the conversation. So after we got engaged, people were like, oh, where are you going to do it? Like, what are you going to do? And I think a lot of people started swaying us into the location to make us feel like, you know, let it be semi-local.
Yeah, you know, it was what you said. You wanted the Maldives. Like that was part of your dream ideal wedding.
Yeah. And that was expensive too.
And not to say you won't get that, but we picked the happy medium where it's like it was still a destination wedding for those coming from Cali. We also have folks in Oregon, folks in New York, folks everywhere. Yeah. And so it was like, all right, well, let us stay put, and everybody will just come to us.
Yeah. And I also wanted to plan. Like, be part of the planning process. So I felt like if it was gonna be somewhere else, I wouldn't have my hands on like what we were doing. So that would have made it really like strange. So that definitely played a part into why we chose Dallas for sure.
And I think the whole planning process, or throughout the planning process, we have to acknowledge that we were kind of catering to the expectations and considerations of others more than ourselves.
For sure.
So when we get to August, August, when we really start having that question of, do we want to do this? At this point, we had waived on the no kids. We had waived on the destination part, and just the overall experience. And it was like, bruh,
is this really what we wanted?
Bro, we're finna do all this money for who? For them or for us?
Yeah.
And are we focused on the short term or the long term? I've always been a long term player. I would say the same about you. And I think that's when that conversation in August came around. It was like, yo, how you feeling? We kind of had a mutual understanding up to that point.
So you're very like numbers logistical. Like you want to be like, run me the receipt and tell me if this makes sense, right? And I'm more so like I want to make sure that the timeline works, right? So with my mix of, we're really about to have a COVID wedding, plus your mix of, this really is about to be beyond the budget that we thought it was going to be, that was just an ultimate like no, and we can just kind of chuck it up.
Right.
And accept the fact. And I don't think there was a time where we really sat and we were like, are we making the wrong decision? Like once we made the decision, it was kind of just like, that's it.
I think we viewed it as a blessing in disguise. And I was having conversations throughout that whole time with clients of mine.
Yes, let's talk about that.
Okay.
Because clients
and different
work
people
in favor sometimes, right? So you were having conversation with people who were like, we have one individual who I really admire for saying this, came up to you and was like, bro, don't invite me to your wedding.
Straight up.
Right? And then you also had clients who did the wedding, and I won't even say regretted the wedding, but would have done it differently now that they know how much they put into the wedding. And then some were just like, we scrapped it all and just did it some other way, right? Yeah. So with all those conversations, that kind of led you to do what?
It had me reevaluate what I really considered valuable.
Yeah.
And was it that day or was it the marriage?
Right.
And I don't know who dropped the gem, and I think it was frequent within the whole planning process. It was like, don't invite people to the wedding that wouldn't be there for your marriage.
Facts.
And I think the overall situation is don't put more into the wedding than you do for the marriage. And I feel like we were doing that up to some degree. And when I heard, the variety of different individuals tell me how they felt about the wedding that they had, the ones who did it in their backyard had no regrets. They felt like it was what worked for them. The ones who did the courthouse, it worked for them. The ones who had the weddings, they liked it. Did the destination weddings, they liked it, but it was like, hey, I probably would have changed this. And even those individuals kept it a buck with me and was like, yo, like, it's worth considering. You're already feeling this way. So I feel like I was on this, I was teetering the fence. Yeah. And I think those conversations coming from respectable individuals
for sure
really helped propel me to like, all right, man, what do you value? You know what I'm saying? Are you doing this for Justine and you? Yeah. Or are you doing this for y'all family and friends? It's like, what do you value?
Right. So then when October came around and we sent out the cancellation, right? I think our therapy sessions happen when we walk. So like when we have our active, what do you call it?
Active recovery day.
Active recovery day, which is usually on Sunday. So we like do a 5-mile walk together, whatever. And we've had plenty of conversations around, okay, now that we have this money that we saved up, and I'll be very transparent, when COVID hit and we were like, hey, money ain't coming in the way we think it's gonna come in, we gonna have to cut this little savings piece right here. Because if it's not, like, there's nothing we could do, right? So, I mean, we missed money that way, and then it took us a minute to kind of recover. So we were short on the goal already. Mm-hmm. So at that point, we were like, okay.
Ain't no point in going in debt over no wedding. I vividly remember us saying that. And I refuse.
Another statistic that they had actually shared on the Knot was average millennials between the ages of like 21, right? At this point in time, between 21 and 30 are taking out a $10,000 loan to pay for a wedding. I said, oh no, we're not doing that.
Not us.
No. So
not us.
That's when we started saying, okay, well, how do we reallocate these funds that we've saved up at this point in time to invest in our future, right? So that's where we led into the house conversation, which kind of fell into our lap of like, okay, well, maybe this is an option. What?
I just think it's the natural course of things. Yeah. Like if you think about traditionally, like, all right, people meet, you court, you get together, you propose, you wedding, you house, you baby. Like that's the timeline.
The societal steps.
The societal steps of how things should be done.
Right.
Now, whether you abide by them or not, that's up to you.
Right.
But I think naturally that's how that. So once we got the wedding, it was like, oh, well, okay, no more wedding. We're already married. What's next? It was like, all right, how can we, like you said, allocate these funds?
Up next for us, right?
Shameless plug. But you start thinking, okay, what can I do? And for me, it was like, we need to allocate this money in one or two ways. It's either a home or an income generating asset, like something that's going to bring us funds monthly, Right. Just because we can't talk about financial freedom and all these goals we have as a community and personally within our relationship, and then not actively try to do them.
Correct.
So that's where we were at with it. So once the wedding was out the way, I was like, all right, bet, what's next? And lo and behold, kind of just fell into the I don't want to say the market, but you're looking around actively now.
Yeah. And COVID was literally a blessing because interest rates have dropped so that it really made it an opportunity for us to get into like,
is this what we want, or
is this what we want? Yeah. And is it the time to catch it because interest rates are low? We're kind of working on debt situation. Like we're in a good situation where this can work for us, right? So that's where we started having that conversation. But we'll get into that in a minute.
Welcome.
No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, so now that we've talked about the timeline, we've talked about what our decision was, why the decision we made. Let's talk about why we decided not to disclose that we were married when we got married. So, like we said, December 2019, that's when we did the virtual I-dos. But that's been a year and some change from now. Yeah. So, like, we're literally working on year 2 right now.
That's crazy.
And we started this podcast last summer. So why did we choose not to disclose to the masses, to our...
That we were married?
Yeah, that we weren't married. Or that we were married, I'm sorry.
I think initially, for me, it was not wanting to ruin the excitement for the wedding that was to come.
Right.
So married in December, I know we keep saying it. Had a whole year, 15 months in between that time and the wedding, to kind of keep it under wraps. And I just didn't want to ruin anybody's excitement for the wedding. It's like, or imagine here, oh, they're already married. Like, what am I going to the wedding for? It's like, that's how I viewed it.
Right.
And I may have been incorrect about it, but that really was my initial whole purpose of not sharing the information, publicly.
Right. And the only people that we did decide to tell, like shortly after it happened, and when I say shortly, I mean literally like within a month of it happening.
Because literally it was going home.
Yeah.
That Christmas. So like 10 days later.
Yeah.
It was just like...
Actually, no.
How? What you
mean?
mean?
We told your mom We told your mom
went
then.
home for Christmas.
But I didn't tell my parents then. Because we were still in hospital phase. So I felt like it was too much to like, hey,
just to let you know, like,
just so you know, right? So I had gone home, I think, for my little brother's like basketball game in February. So like 2 months later, and that's when I told my parents. And it was a very like easy conversation with I think both sets of parents, right? So
once we explained why we did it, I think the respect was there.
And we had asked that they didn't disclose it to anyone else. The only reason we were kind of telling them was because if they had seen like changes in information or whatever, or if we had, you know, kind of just talked about it, or we needed somebody to talk through it with because we were still planning at that time, they understood where we were kind of coming from. So we were like, okay, we're going to keep it to a minimum of who we share it with. And that was just because of all the things that I just listed, right? Like, we just, I don't know. I didn't want to disclose it to everybody.
Yeah, we weren't pressed about it. We weren't, nothing had changed just in terms of, or did you feel like there was a dynamic change?
Between engaged Justine and wife Justine?
Yeah.
I think there was a mental, like, shift of, like, damn, I'm a wife. Like, I am.
That's funny, because we could only joke about it, like, in our crib. Like, once we leave the crib, it was like, I'm over here like, yeah, my fiance this, that.
Oh, my girl. Like, right. So sometimes when I go to the shop, he'd be like, oh, yeah, my girl. Negro.
No, I say my lady. I don't say girl. But.
Well, yes, you're right. Sorry, I apologize.
No, that's not a thing. That's just me personally. I don't say girl.
But, what? Did I feel a shift? No. Like, I felt like because we were kind of hiding it on the low.
We were used to that.
If anybody knows the how we met story or how we started dating story, then you understand why we're joking about it.
That's probably for our Oregon State family and friends. They might laugh at that one. But yeah, so I mean, keeping stuff to ourselves has never been new to us.
Yeah.
Like if it was intimate between us, then it was intimate between us.
Right.
You know.
So you had made a really good point earlier today, actually, before we even started podcasting, and he had said we have never been scared to sacrifice for what we wanted. Or maybe that was yesterday while we were having our walk or whatever. I don't know. But we've never been scared to sacrifice for something that we wanted. And we knew that as long as it made sense to us, that it would work. Right? And we've been very transparent. Like, we will always figure it out. Like, if we're put in a situation, we'll figure it out. But I think we've proven to just ourselves, but other people, like, we do choose to sacrifice, right? So like the car situation that we disclosed last season, rocking with one car for 11 months, 10 months.
We got that in October,
That wasn't easy, right? But we knew that was gonna be just a temporary sacrifice. So, hey, you know, sacrificing the fact that we're getting married a little bit earlier, to still prep ourselves financially while also still planning. That was okay. It was a sacrifice. Choosing not to tell people, I think, was still like, you know, we're trying to protect other people's feelings, but also like keep what we had to ourselves. So with that,
what's up?
Would you do it again?
Oh, 100%. I love where we're at. I love how we moved up. Like, I think you just said it. Like, we are learning, because we are learning, that the approval that matters the most is the person that I'm making that decision with.
Right.
So it's like, I care about how you view me in the decision I'm making. That has to do with you.
Yeah.
So it's like, and vice versa. So, yeah, I do it again. Like, just a moment of transparency. I think life is life, and you don't account for the hiccups that are to come.
Yeah.
You know, life throws you curveballs, and you really gotta, you know, deal with them. Kyle told me this a long time ago. I remember I was in first year in college, and he was like, "Bro, how you living?" And I was like, "You know, I'm just rolling with these punches that life is throwing." And he was like, "Make sure you still throwing jabs though." And to this day, I remember that phrase, question, and it's like a principle of life. Like, you can never prepare for COVID and what was to come in 2020. We didn't know we were gonna have to cancel and reschedule a wedding. But you kind of just roll with it. You know what I'm saying? And you make decisions that still keep you in that fight. You know? And when I say this fight, I mean, obviously, like marriage.
Yeah.
The goal of exceeding, having a long, successful, everlasting marriage. Like that's the goal. So you kind of reposition and
you pivot.
Yeah. You pivot. So that's my take on it. So absolutely.
And before we disclose too much, right?
What happened?
Just know that there's a part 2 to this piece here. So I don't want to give our people too much, but I definitely wanted to make sure that we gave you guys the inside look of what this season is really going to look like and why it's going to look the way it does, apart from last season. Because this is married, publicly married. Watts. This is Watts. I'm still learning how to do this, y'all.
The Watts family.
The Watts family married. And the evolution of what that looks like. So I want to make sure that everybody knows going into season 2, that's what you're going to get out of us. What can you say about season 2 that you can tell people that they should prepare for this season?
I think you can expect better podcasters.
What?
That's
very true.
Our first season, shout out to everybody who supported on the real. That's not easy, you know. Being transparent, hopping on a mic, putting it out there for it to never be retracted is not an easy thing to do. And I feel like we did it. We were proud of it. We had hiccups. We knew our best times to make it work and times where it just didn't work. And so that's what for face value, that's what you can definitely expect. But I think you've already said it. We're in a different phase mentally of life where it's like, all right, man, Engage is out, bro. That was fun while it lasted. But engage was never the goal. Marriage was. So that's where my energy is gonna be.
I love that. Yeah, we're elevating. We're elevating. But this is coming in a part 2 phase. So please tune in with us on Wednesday when we drop part 2, because it's going to be vital that you guys understand the difference between wedding, marriage, right? Wedding and marriage, and then what happens in that first year of marriage with full transparency.
In that first year of marriage?
Woo, that's the toughest.
Was 2020 for us, fam.
2020 was a rough year.
Everybody
and then
knows
to be
that.
Married? Oh, baby.
And then we're married on a low. So it's like, man, you know what? Just know, episode 2, part 2, y'all in for a treat.
For sure.
We can end on that. Y'all can already start imagining.
Oh, man. Stay tuned.
We love y'all, and thank you for listening, and welcome back.